It seems no matter who you are or where you are, if you're in the middle of nowhere, creepy things are gonna happen. These subscribers sent in their allegedly true, creepy encounters with people and paranormal and unexplainable things while out in the middle of nowhere. As always, it is up to you whether you believe these stories or not. If you have a story you would like to share in a future episode, whether it be from the middle of nowhere or something else completely different, be sure to submit your story at swampdweller.net or the email you can find in the description down below. It would be my honor to share your story on the channel. It's stories like yours that keep this channel going. Now, if you don't know, before we get into this video, on the side you can see that there is a donation bot. This is to help the wildfires that are ravaging the Amazon rainforest. The Amazon rainforest are the lungs of our planet, and if the rainforest dies, we die too. So please, if you have a few dollars to spare, please check out and donate to the fundraiser on the side of this video. You can also find the fundraiser on any other video on my channel. It really would help save our planet. Now, without further hesitation, let's get into these creepy, middle of nowhere stories. So this happened to me just last night, and I can't stop thinking about it. For some context, I am 19 years old and I live in the Portuguese countryside with my mom. She is a surgeon, and about once a week or so she has these 24-hour shifts where she cannot come home unless they grant an exception for roughly 2 hours before she goes back. Our house has a small garden at the back where she grows different sorts of flowers, and where our dog is. Now, because of how the house is built, to get to the backyard you need to pass a small open air part to the left of the entrance of the home itself, unlock a small gate, then walk a few meters before the yard appears to your left. That's where my dog is. This will come into play in a moment. In the front yard, which is far bigger, we have a lot of trees, flowers, and other plants my mother likes to tend to in her free time. And near one of the roughly 2-meter or so tall fences, which is to the right of the entrance into the home, there's a wooden table and some wooden seats firmly planted in the ground right next to the fence. I occasionally like to go there to relax and perhaps smoke for a bit. This being the only part of the property with a view, I have a bit of a habit sometimes forgetting my pack of cigarettes or a glass of water whenever I'm drinking out there. Last Wednesday had been one of those nights where my mother was at the hospital. I had been home all day, and, having been done with the university for the year, mostly playing video games. I took in half an hour to tend to the dog and take it outside for a walk, and I did other minor things. At around 11 p.m., I hear the dog going absolutely wild. Given that the window in my room peeks directly down to the backyard, which is roughly 5 feet or so below my window, I decided to see what was going on. Maybe another stray dog found its way from the entrance again and riled her up, I thought. This has happened a couple of times in the past, so it wouldn't be a big deal. Upon peeking down, I noticed the dog was running from my right, which leads to the passage I mentioned earlier that blocked her movement by the small gate, and to my left were only stone walls, a couple of plants, and our barbecue place. I tried to call out the dog, but it refused to acknowledge me. Thinking it was not a big deal, I decided to put my hoodie on and bring a few dog biscuits to see if I could calm it down. Now, it's the dead of night in the countryside, so naturally, I turn on some of the lights outside, which in retrospective, doesn't really brighten up the whole property very well. I got the keys, turned on my phone's flashlight, and headed outside. My dog was to my left, trying to get past the gate and still barking like crazy for whatever reason. Upon trying to approach it with the snacks in my hand, it growled at me as if to demand me to open the small gate, not caring about the treats I had brought. The second I opened it, it darted past me and towards the entrance to the home. I grabbed it by the collar, and then sat there, barking louder than I have ever heard it bark at something in the direction of the table. Not being able to see what it was, I shined my phone's light in that general direction, and within a few moments, I saw exactly what it was. There was a man. looking as if he was in his high late 40s, slightly hunched over as if he was really drunk, messing with the fence. By this point, it was looking at me. He grunted and called over, saying, "Come closer, I want to show you something." The man was trying to get into my home, and was trying to lure me close to do God knows what. "I'll let the dog loose and call the cops right now if you don't leave immediately. Get out!" I screamed as loud as I could, in order to get the attention of any neighbor which could be awake at that time to try to scare him off. Not fazed by this, and able to fit through the gaps in the fence, he started to try to climb the fence. I let go of the dog and let it charge at the man, while at the same time going back inside to grab a kitchen knife and try to dial 112, the Portuguese variant of 911, in one hand in the rush. I heard screams from outside and the dog growling. Upon going back outside, I saw the man was now trying to get back outside the fence, and the dog had apparently bitten him and was trying to go back for another bite of the intruder. The operator picked up and I described the situation as best as I could in my agitated state. Eventually, the man ran into the fields and went out of view. The dog sat there growling and occasionally barking to make sure the man was gone. In time, the dog came back to me and dropped a piece of torn clothing from the man and sat there next to me. "Good girl," I said quietly, while staring at where the man had come from originally, wanting to make sure the man didn't come back. The police arrived a few minutes later and I told them what had happened. Sadly, I could not give any proper description other than what I told you guys, but the fingerprints combined with the torn, slightly bloody clothing and how recent the event was made it, as they told me, likely he'd be apprehended soon. Come Thursday afternoon, I received a phone call telling me the man had been caught passed out a block down the road from alcohol. He's currently in police custody, and I hope he gets put away for a while, and that we never, ever see each other again. Also, one last note, I couldn't figure out where to place it in the story, the man had a pack of cigarettes with him. The exact pack of cigarettes I had seemingly lost the day before. So not only did he try to break in, drunk, and possibly attempt to harm me, the fool took my cigarettes. This happened recently. I was at my friend's house, who I will call Nick. His house is in the woods with no fence separating his property from them. So we started off normal, playing some video games, knee hockey, and just messing around in his backyard. When we were playing soccer in his backyard though, a rock came flying out of the woods and flew right by my friend's face, nearly hitting him. He didn't see it, so I told him, but of course he didn't believe me. Now, we aren't the type to go hide away in his house when things like this happen, so we stayed outside and continued playing. Now, only a few minutes later, it happened again, except this time, it hit him directly. Now, he was angry, as he has a short temper, and started walking towards where the rock came from, or at least where we thought the rock came from. Now, it was pretty dark at this point, so we couldn't see into the woods all that well. This was when another rock came hurling out and hit me in the face, not even an inch away from my eye. Neither of us saw where it came from, so we started moving more quickly into the woods. That is when we heard branches start breaking in front of us. We chased whoever or whatever it was, but stopped when Nick tripped on a rock. We went back into his house and started to watch a movie on Netflix downstairs, when suddenly a rock about the size of a baseball came flying through his basement window. Once again, me and Nick ran outside, but this time we brought our BB guns with us. Not that it would have done much anyway. He handed me a flashlight, and I knew what he wanted me to do. I turned on the light and pointed it at the woods. I swear, we saw a dark figure running into the woods. He opened fire, but most likely missed. At this point, we still hadn't called the police because we are dumb teenagers. This time we sat in a bush next to his house, waiting for the man to come back. After what we thought was about 20 minutes of waiting, we saw someone come out. I turned on the flashlight, lighting up a man who was dressed in baggy clothes and easily over 6 foot tall. My friend shot at him twice and hit him both times. The man fell to the ground after wincing with pain and then immediately got up and sprinted away. This time we didn't chase because we knew he wouldn't be coming back. This story is completely true and happened last night at 1 in the morning. I am currently on holiday with my family in the southwest of England. We have rented a house out for the week in the middle of a forest, quite literally in the middle of nowhere. I'm not from England, and I'm from a much colder place. This will be important later. This all started 3 days ago when I first arrived. It was late in the night and around 2, and I couldn't get to sleep because it was far too warm for me, so I just lay there on my bed. That's when the noises started. In the distance, you could hear a very faint screaming. Not a high-pitched woman scream, but a lower tone. Not a man scream either. It's hard to really explain. I had convinced myself that it must just be a deer, like a muntjac barking or something. But a small part of me still didn't believe it. That was when the motion sensor light started going on and off, repeatedly for hours. I then tried to convince myself it was just moths until I heard faint footsteps. I passed out shortly after that. Nothing happened 2 nights ago, though, thankfully. Last night, however, was a different story. I know it was around 1 a.m. because I was talking to friends on Snapchat at around the time the screeching started. It slowly got closer and closer until it was almost 50 yards from the house. The screaming had a pitch between a man and a woman, but with a lower, darker undertone, and then suddenly stopped screaming. That was around the time I heard footsteps along the gravel outside the holiday home. I'm not going to make up that I opened the blinds wider. To be honest, I was much too scared to open them, and much too cowardly to do that. I only got a flash of movement in the darkness and the sliver of the opening between the curtains. I got no sleep that night. How could I? I don't understand how my parents didn't hear it. They said they were asleep from 11 and never heard a thing, but my sister heard the same thing apparently. We then tried to get a reasonable explanation of what it is. We looked up deer barking and any other native animal, but no animals make that sound. Nothing should make that sound. It was inhuman and ungodly. I will keep you updated if it returns, and I'll see if I can see what it actually looks like. Thank you for sharing my story, and I'm sorry it was so short. This happened to me almost 4 years ago in 2015. For reference, I was a 25-year-old female at the time and had just had my son. My now husband, then fiance, had just moved into this cute lake house in Reed City, Michigan. This lake house was 3 stories altogether. It had a huge basement on the main floor with a bedroom, kitchen, living room, and dining room, bathroom, and laundry. It also had the 3rd floor, which had 2 bedrooms with a bathroom in between them. It was in a private association with 2 lakes out in the middle of nowhere. It was perfect, or so we thought. We got to the house we were renting from a family friend of my husband's. When we got to the house, it was in horrible shape. The lady was a hoarder, and there was barely any room to move out about the house. One of the creepiest parts was upstairs. The lady had been a former foster mom, and she had a little boy with disabilities who had passed years before. And in the upstairs bedrooms, there were multiple hospital beds that she insisted we keep there and used. Yeah, right. Other creepy parts were this closet at the bottom of the stairs. It didn't have a door, but the inside walls were covered with pictures of kids. Not anything illegal or anything, but just kids doing kid stuff. Camping, crafts, and playing, stuff like that. Anyways, we covered that up instantly, putting boxes and such in front of it. The landlady had mentioned a couple of things that had happened that made her think her son who had passed was there in a spirit form. It was their vacation home, but it was also his favorite place in the world. My husband and I just kind of laughed it off. We were so excited to finally be getting our own place, and the place didn't really give us any strange vibes, so we didn't care. About a month into being there, my husband came home and said he had a surprise for me, and to come out. So I hauled my pregnant butt outside, and in the back of the truck was a dog. I was so excited because my husband works second shift, so he didn't get home till almost midnight every night, and I had been nagging him for something besides my cat to keep me company. The dog's name was Zeus, and he was a golden lab and a pit mix. He was so sweet, at first. That quickly changed. Zeus went from being a nice dog anytime he was outside, but would change the second he came inside. There were times I was more scared of him than the house. He would growl at me, but it was like he wasn't actually looking at me. Thinking back now, I wonder if it was me he was growling at or if there was something behind me. We had a long hall between the front door and the kitchen, and he would just stand there, all his hair raised, barking and growling towards the door. So I would sneak up to the door and look outside, and there was never anything there. I would just tell Zeus it was okay, there was nothing there. Then I would go back to my business just to have him start back up minutes later. Some days he did this all day long, and it was exhausting and unnerving. He would also refuse to go upstairs as he acted terrified of it. Our bedroom at the time was downstairs, but I had my husband move the hospital beds downstairs so I could turn one of the upstairs rooms into a nursery. Upstairs it kind of teed off with a room on the left side of the stairs and the bathroom directly ahead and the other room on the right side. The one on the left was the nursery, and the right was a guest room for my family when they came, because they lived 2 hours away and would stay with us for the weekend when they would come visit. About a month or so before I had my son, this was probably the end of September, beginning of October, my best friend at the time was having problems with her boyfriend, so I told her she could come stay with us and that she could move into the nursery since I wanted to keep the guest room open for my parents. About a week or two after she moved in, she asked me why I kept going into the guest room every night after she laid down to go to bed. She also asked if it was a little bit quieter since she was pregnant too, and worked almost 2 hours away every day and didn't get much sleep. I told her I didn't know what she was talking about, since I hadn't even gone upstairs since the day that she moved in, and I helped her carry her stuff up. She told me she'd lock her door every night because as soon as it was quiet downstairs she'd try to get some sleep, she'd hear the guest bedroom door open and then walking across the hallway. She said the steps would stop outside her door, wait a minute, and then turn around and go back into the guest room, and shut the door. That obviously freaked me the hell out. My sister, who was 15 at the time, said that any time she'd be up there alone, she'd wake up, and she'd try to get out of bed but couldn't. She was frozen in fear and didn't know why. She didn't see anything or hear anything that I know of. She was just so terrified. Also, written in crayon on one of the stairs was the little boy's name who had passed. She said she'd always look at it every time she'd go upstairs because the stairs were steep and hard to miss. The first time she saw them, they were in green crayon. The second time, pink. One time, just after my son was born, I put him to sleep in his bed and went to check the mail. When I came back, the front door was locked. This was an old house and the doors didn't lock by themselves, so after a full-blown panic attack, I ran around the back door, tried that door. That door is usually stuck, and I was trying aggressively to get into the house. I broke the entire knob out of the door, so that there was a hole where it should be. That was definitely terrifying, but the scariest thing that happened to me happened about a month later. I was home alone with my son and it was about 11 p.m. I had just got done feeding my son and had gotten him back to sleep. I was relaxing in my room, watching a movie, when all of a sudden I heard walking upstairs. It wasn't dainty little footsteps, it sounded like a full-grown man parading around my house. It sounded like they were wearing some heavy boots. Now, in this association, there had been some break-ins, and some people had mentioned that sheds and garages had things taken. The first thing that popped into my mind, since my father-in-law had just told me about it that day, was that somebody was breaking in. I kept thinking it was this guy, and being terrified and knowing, since we live in the middle of nowhere, it would take the cops almost an hour to get there, and by the time that happened it would be way too late. So I decided I wasn't going down without a fight, and I was not about to let anything happen to my sweet little baby boy. So I grabbed my husband's shotgun, grabbed Zeus, locked the bedroom door, and I slowly went upstairs with gun locked and loaded, Zeus pacing back and forth at the bottom of the stairs, and all the doors were open, and lights were on, so I quickly cleared nursery, My friend had moved back out and it was back to a nursery at this time. Then the bathroom, then the second bedroom. About this time I hear something down in the basement. Confused since there was no way anyone could have come down past me without seeing or hearing them, even while I was still in my room, I went downstairs and then slowly down to my basement. Zeus ran down before me and I followed him quickly. We cleared the basement. There was no one there. Then, as I'm coming up the stairs, I hear the walking upstairs yet again. This time I practically ran up the stairs, prepared to catch this jerk who I was convinced had broken in, and I was going to teach him a lesson. When I got upstairs, once again, there was no one. This goes on literally for an hour. I'm just running back and forth between the basement and the top floor of the house. After about 2 or 3 rounds, I had gone from scared to pissed and was pretty much just trying to catch this dang thing so I could tell it to screw off, since at this point, I had decided it was not a living person. So I just shouted, "You are so funny, now leave us alone." I then went back into the bedroom and locked the door behind me. I stayed there until my husband got home from work. Now, some people may think, that's nothing. But to a new mom who's home alone in the middle of nowhere at 11 p.m., that was terrifying. We moved out a month or so later, and even now when we drive past that house, I feel as though someone, or something, is watching me, and I get goosebumps all over my body. I remembered something that happened to my best friend and I a few years ago, and figured I might share it on the show. While my best friend at the time and I were seniors in high school, around 2016 or so, we went on a weekend trip to visit my grandmother a couple of hours away from my town in Georgia. The town we lived in was comparatively small for the state, but one of the biggest towns within a few hours. We had to travel about 2.5 hours to get through tiny, somewhat redneck towns to get to my grandmother's place. We were on our way back home when we had to stop at a gas station literally in the middle of nowhere. I'm talking cornfields, cotton fields, streets with no signs or lights, not even stop signs, and definitely no cell service. The convenience store attached to the gas station had maybe a couple of snacks inside, but looked deserted from outside. No other cars or people in sight, and we didn't bother getting anything other than gas. I paid with my card, mainly because I didn't want to leave my 5'1", 100-pound friend alone in the car while I went inside. Another car pulled up on the other side of the gas station pump while I was starting to pump gas. And because of everything, I'd read online forums and stuff like that, I already had a weird feeling and decided to stay alert and stand outside of the car with my driver's side door open so my friend could see and hear everything going on. A thin, late 50-ish older man got out of the car and seemed to be paying around at the pump and standing beside his car while he got everything going. But after a few seconds, he walked around the pump and maneuvered himself around my car door to stand within a foot of me and asked if he could pump my gas for me. Luckily, the gas nozzle was locked, so I was pumping without having to hold it. I immediately placed myself between the opening of the door and the man, prepared to either shut the door with me inside it or move and slam it behind me to protect my friend if necessary. I calmly told him it was fine and no thank you. He looked me up and down with the corner of his lip tilted and said, "Pretty girls like you shouldn't be out here all alone, and you definitely shouldn't have to do this by yourself. Let a man help you, baby," and covered my hand with his own as he reached for the gas pump I was holding. I jerked my hand out from underneath his and slammed my car door shut, thinking the last thing I would want is him jumping in my car and driving away with my friend in the passenger seat. Orange flags started tinting red, and my usual overly polite demeanor turned serious as I remembered something I'd read that said it was better to be safe and to seem to be mean rather than to be polite and uncomfortable. So I responded and said, "Sir, get away from me. I can pump my own gas and I've already said no thank you. Leave us alone." He didn't move. He raised his chin and managed to make eye contact with me with all lip tilt gone. I stared him down and figured I'd gotten enough gas to last us time to get the hell out of wherever we are. So I maintained eye contact, pulled the nozzle out, and basically threw it back into the pump before getting into my car and driving off. As we drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw that his car wasn't even being filled up with gas. He was telling me he was driving by and decided to help a damsel in distress out. My friend was shaking the whole way home, telling me she would have just let the man pump her gas. But I'm just glad some of the confidence I gained from reading things online helped me stay attentive and respond confidently enough to get out of that situation. My history is one that keeps creeping me out to this day. It makes me unable to go into the woods. It happened some years ago during the summer. I'm Canadian, and I love to go camping into the wild and the woods with my friends. Let's call them Steve and Frank. Our trio always ended up in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by trees and rivers. And let's point it out, our rivers aren't small. They could be more than 10 meters from one side to the other. Our favorite spot was in the north of Quebec, on the east side close to St. Madeleine Island. Now, keep in mind, I believe in nothing. Aliens? Only if I saw one myself. Ghost? Never met or felt one in my life, and I am a 30-year-old person. God? Don't believe in a super being, so sorry. So, it was in the middle of the summer, and like always, Steve, Frank, and I chose to take our vacancies at the same time, and to go to our favorite spot for a week. We left our car at Steve's mom's house and went back to our trail by foot. We had 6 days left and passed them perfectly well. What? You thought it was during that time everything happened? By luck? No. No. It was far worse. It happened while we were going home. We left our camp at the first light of the day. But it was a dark one, and the wind was as cold as a November. There was no sound at all, and it worried us. We've never heard the forest go silent like that. No birds, no animals, nothing, besides the wind howling in the branches. Then we heard a scream. Something that sounded just like a human that was about to be murdered. It sounded like a child's voice. We all froze in place as the child started screaming, "Help me, Mommy! Help me!" My blood turned into ice and we looked at each other, unable to speak. Without a doubt, we all heard it, but we weren't able to move. We were paralyzed in fear. For me, I didn't like how the child sounded. It was like as if it sounded false, you know? Yes, it was panicking, scared, but at the same time so neutral. Like a child trying to play another character, but not being that great. Yes, it. I refused to call that thing by another pronoun. Steve and Frank wanted to go help it, but I stopped them. Suddenly, something like a roar makes us jump. It didn't sound like a lion or a tiger, but like a very, very angry thing, almost demonic in nature. Without waiting any longer, we started walking again, as fast as we could with all our stock. We could hear something big and heavy walk or run in the forest. It has very good sense of smell, maybe even the best on this planet. You'd know if it chased you or hunted you. I don't know how, but while we were fleeing, I slipped on something and fell down a steep slope. Stunned, I could barely hear my friend and almost lost consciousness. I remember the feeling of blood on my face and I could barely feel the bruises forming. I don't know how long I remained on the ground. 1, 2, maybe even 10 minutes. I don't know. But what definitely brought me back was a scream. Frank's scream. I sat looking all around me. Abandoning all my stuff, I tried to climb, but I was unsuccessful. I screamed my friends' names but got no answers. I tried for a long time to climb in different ways, but it wasn't working. My only chance was to walk and find another way. As I began my lonely path, I heard another scream. This time it was Steve. I recognized him 100% because that man screamed like a 3-year-old girl when he was scared. I froze in place before starting to run, screaming his name. Why? Because I heard him close to me, maybe 100 meters or so. Unfortunately, I only found blood. No corpse, no flesh or anything. Only a pool of blood and blood on the trees. Too much. Too much for a grown man to survive. I started crying, knowing all too well what I saw meant. Heartbroken, I screamed my pain as hard as I could. I screamed Frank's name. He didn't answer me, but the roaring did. This time I didn't freeze but started to run. I needed to go back to the town and call for help. Maybe they were alive, I tried to tell myself. Then something hit me like a truck. I lost my breath and fell on the ground. All around me turned black for a second before my view came back to normal, and what I saw still haunts my dreams. A creature, maybe 10 foot tall. Yes, I know what 10 foot is. Like, even if I am Canadian, it stood before me. It was humanoid, but covered in, like, deer fur, with its back legs. Even with the fur, it looked skinny and unhealthy. The fur was very pale. I don't know how to describe it other than a zombie deer biped, and that it was 10 foot tall. Its arms were longer than they should be, and his hands end up with black dirty claws. Its head looked almost human, but with a deer skull on it. The above muzzle was longer than the lower jaw. In its mouth, I could see fangs. I guess not really fangs, but like herbivore teeth broke into fangs. The worst part was the fact that this thing was covered in fresh blood, very fresh blood. I screamed and it screamed back before laughing. I swear this asshole laughed in my face. It tilted its head on the side before talking with a child's voice. Jeez, I still have goosebumps all over me as I write this. Why didn't you help me, Mommy? For context, I'm a trans man. Besides my 2 friends, their parents, and mine, no one in my circle knows about it. I changed my gender after having a miscarriage, but it's not the subject. My blood froze in my veins, tears rolling on my face. It fell on its hands, its eyes, they were as red as the blood. It spoke again, making 1 step towards me, with Frank's voice, another step, with Steve's voice. I was unable to move, only able to cry. The smell of death and blood was in the air. When it comes only inches from my face, I saw the surprise in its eyes. For a second, it looked like a child caught doing something bad. Stop it! Back off now! A woman's voice rose behind it, and to my surprise, it stepped back, lowering its body in literal submission. I could now see who talked. A woman. Yes, but a Native American. She eyed the beast, not disgusted but angry. She pointed her finger at the thing and literally growled at it. I would always remember this part because I don't know what she was or how she had power over this creature, but somehow she made it leave. I woke up in the hospital hours later after losing consciousness. My friends went missing. Well, Frank went missing after the cops found Steve's blood on the ground. I wasn't suspected because of my state, and that I had no blood on me besides my shoes. I had kept for me what I saw and told no one until now. Why, you ask? Because last week I went to see Steve's mother and I saw her. The Native American woman, and she wasn't alone. She had this extra skinny woman with her, another native one. I walked past them, but I swear I smelled death and blood. But what scared me the most was the skinny woman's blood-red eyes. I'm sure that thing that I saw was a Wendigo, a creature from the natives' folklore that's born from cannibalism. It's said to have red eyes, to grow as much as it eats, even if it looks anorexic. Stay safe if you ever dare not to follow my advice. Don't go into the woods of Canada to go camping. If you hear a voice in the forest, run. Run as fast as you can before it smells and finds you. I hope nobody else will ever experience this, and as for me, I don't know if it will get me one day or if it only comes back to torture me. Thanks for listening to these creepy and allegedly true middle-of-nowhere stories. Some of these really gave me goosebumps while reading them, and I hope you got some goosebumps while listening. If you enjoyed these stories, please hit that like button as it helps me out a ton. The more likes this video gets, the more YouTube promotes it to fresh new eyes. If you're new to the swamp, why not subscribe and turn on notifications to never miss a new video. as I upload them almost every single day on all things natural and supernatural. If you guys aren't aware, I am currently helping promote and run a fundraiser for the Amazon rainforest fires. If you guys would like to support in any way you can, please check out the donation link you can find on the side of this video. You can also find it on the side of every other video that I have on my channel. If you guys have a story you would like to submit in a future video, whether it's a middle of nowhere story or something different, be sure to do so by sending it in at swampdweller.net or the email you can find in the description down below. I would love to share your story with everyone here in the swamp, and stories like yours that help keep this channel going. Now, I guess this video's over. Thanks for watching, and if you made it to the very end, be sure to comment "jumping green bean" to confuse everybody who didn't make it to the end. I'll see you guys soon with another creepy video.